sheep at the minute, and we have over 250 more sheep this year, which gave me a headache to try and think where am I going to put them all, but we've got them all squeezed in. We had our cattle hall is full to capacity, so we've coming up in 700 head of cattle, but in total across the days we have almost 4,000 head of livestock here, and that's everything from the equine to the rabbits, the poultry, and that makes it a very important showcase. It does indeed. I mean, this is the showcase for Ireland, for the farmers. As you can see, I mean, they all bring out the best of their breed, and there's great competition to take home that championship reserve.
And when you wander around, it's hugely sociable.
It is indeed, yes. It's a really good, big, fun day out, and it's great to give the farmers that they can, you know, take a step off the farm, relax, and enjoy a day out. Maybe meet people that they haven't seen since this time last year, and have a good catch up. And we're so blessed with the weather this week as well.
Well, the show is ahead of us. Thank you, Rhonda, for having a few words with us.
Thank you.
Our first competitor, number 250.
From the sheep rings out to the cattle rings, there's several of them on my left hand side, and on the right hand side these massive sheds that they're housed in, but the bit in between is where the cattle are being prepared for their final performance, as it were. So we're going to have a chat a bit with some of them. So here you are, where are you from and what are you showing?
William McAllister from Kells in Ballymena, County Antrim. We are showing two shorthorn cattle, a yearling heifer and a yearling bull. They're going out now today in the performance recorded class, where the animals visual judging as awarded points, and then they have been weighed and back fat scanned for muscle and fat, and then that's taken into account as well, and then points are put together and then they're placed accordingly.
How important is it to be here and to have these cattle on show?
It's a short window. Like, I've been coming here from I was born, so it's a long time, and my family's the same, and my wife's family's the same. We've always been involved in showing. It's a social aspect after, especially this long, hard winter. Everybody's glad to go out and meet people again and socialise.
I'm going to go into the cattle sheds now. People are very busy in here. They're setting out straw in the bays, they're feeding cattle, they're grooming them. There's a young girl over here with two beautiful calves. Hi, have you got a moment?
Yeah.
What is it you have to get done now before you go out into the ring?
They need washed, and then they'll get their top lines all blown up so that they're all like level.
And where are you from and why did you come to the show?
Newton Ards, and I guess because my parents showed and I've just sort of followed on the tradition of showing.
Hello, who are you?
Jessica Hall.
Not a local accent?
No, I'm from the world.
And have you brought cattle in for this?
No, I live over here now.
Alright, because cattle can't be brought in across the North Sea to here.
Not at the moment, no, with the blue tongue regulations.
How much of a problem is that for cattle feeders?
An awful problem. I actually think there's probably thousands of cattle sitting in England that have been bought to come over here and they can't come. The thing is, you can't do anything about it because it is blue tongue, you know, it's to try and stop the spread of disease. They can't do anything about it, but I suppose in a way it's helping the trade around Northern Ireland because people can't bring things in, but then at the same time you can't bring the new bloodlines or anything like that in, so I don't know, it's hopefully this year, you know, it's slacking a little bit.
Alongside one of the many arenas here, this time there are horses beautifully turned out, and I'm here with John McClenaghan, who is the Vice President of the Ulster Farmers Union.
Yeah, I suppose the first thing to say is what a lovely day it is. We all are well aware of the difficulties the weather has created over the last number of months, but it's just great to be out at Balmoral Show in the sunshine.
Since leaving the EU, the way farmers being paid is changing. There are different schemes happening at different speeds across the UK. Here in Northern Ireland, the new Agriculture Minister, Andrew Muir, has been talking this week about future support payments. John, what do you know so far about them?
Yeah, we've had announcements around what future support will look like. As you identify, it is a devolved issue, so each region has the ability to shape what its future ag support will look like.
There's nothing new in it, in that we have been involved in this process probably for about the last 4 years in terms of a co-design process alongside DAERA, our civil servants, even in the absence of government, designing what future ag support would look like, because it is critical to Northern Ireland. I mean, agriculture, agri-food is our biggest single industry. That has been identified right from the start, that we have to look to have a policy which will maintain that critical mass within our agri-food industry.
And what does the new scheme look like then?
There's still elements of it being designed, I suppose, to really simplify it. And there will be 2 components to the new programme. There will be what will be known as a safety net, so that will be a payment which will be based around what the previous payment recipient would have received, so that will be a percentage less than previously, but it will be a set amount which they will know will be available to their business each year. So that's why we think of it as a safety net. And then there will be other measures. Money will have been taken off the original pot of funding, and that will be targeted towards measures specifically looking at things like carbon reduction on farms, helping us to meet our climate change targets that we have to meet our net zero by 2050.
And so this is, we're talking about a transition year which will begin in about 6 months' time, 2025. It's a massive change for farming here.
It is, but our farmers are up for that change. They recognise the challenges that are ahead of them. We have a commitment once again being reiterated by the Prime Minister about the need for food security, and food security being national security. Northern Irish farmers provide an awful lot of food into the UK market. That's something we want to do more of. We are capable of. We can do that. I think we can demonstrate doing that more sustainably going forward as well.
John McLenahan, Vice President of the Ulster Farmers Union. I'm on my way to meet the Minister, Andrew Muir, but I thought I might stop a few people here and ask how they feel about farming at the moment. Are you farming?
Yeah, well, we're a dairy farmer.
How do you feel about farming these days?
Well, it's tough going, that is, the pricing and the weather and the regulations and stuff, and farm payments is going to change, and you've been worried about the farm payment changing, you've been worried about, the pricing.
Are you prepared to take things on, the new schemes, environmental schemes, everything?
Oh yes, well you have to, because to keep up, and get the farm payment, obviously. I'm assuming that's a step forward for that,
John McAllister, dairy and beef farmer, County Down. I think we're probably more confident now. The Assembly and Executive are back up and functioning. Being very careful not to pit farming against the environment. The two need to work hand in hand, because they can both provide the answers to many of the challenges we face.
I grew up on a farm, so I've always been with cows. We show pedigree cows here. I noticed that there is a lot of younger people not really going into farming because there isn't as much money. I myself, I live with my dad. We're all part-time workers as well as farmers, because you need another income. Being a farmer by itself just doesn't make money,
Well, I've come now to meet the Agriculture Minister, Andrew Muir. Hello.
Hello.
I'm wondering, is this your first ever Balmoral show?
No, I've been to the Balmoral show before. Previously was at the old site in Belfast, and then here.
You're enjoying it?
I am really enjoying it because it's full of positivity. We're showcasing what's great about Northern Ireland's agri-food sectors.
But there are challenges for the Minister, very much, and for the whole of the country, through farming and agriculture. And actually, you were speaking about how you would like to see farming and environment not at loggerheads, not against each other. Is that something you think you can achieve?
I think it's really important that we do achieve it, because the agriculture and the environment go hand in hand, and what we want to do over the time ahead is give sustainability for our farming community, and about doing that is about building resilience and that environmental sustainability, because environmental sustainability is at the core of productivity as well, and that's what I am doing over my time ahead as Minister. Earlier this week I announced a future in terms of the Farm Support and Development Programme for Northern Ireland, and there's a number of different packages and measures as part of that, but key to that is for the UK government to step up and allow me to have the funding to deliver this, because we're sitting at the cliff edge here at the end of March next year in terms of the future support.
Now, you mentioned there that the plan has been launched, but there is some concern perhaps around the details about the farm payment scheme in particular that will be coming in next year. That's what, 6 or 7 months away. That is not a lot of time for people to plan. So what can you say to them?
So there will be a migration towards this over the months and years ahead. And what's absolutely critical in terms of the future of farm support here in Northern Ireland, it's been developed and will continue to be developed through a process of co-design. So that's where environmental groups and farmers are in the room together, we're working together to find solutions towards these issues.
It sounds very positive, but there are huge challenges facing our environment and climate change, which the farming community need to be in a position to address and need to be supported to address. Let's take, for example, the Northern Ireland Assembly have announced that Northern Ireland has become an ecological and biodiversity. There's a crisis here. I've never heard that said in Northern Ireland before. That's a terrible picture.
The picture which we saw last year, for example, in relation to Lough Neagh, was screened not just across Northern Ireland, but across the UK and the world. And that should be an impediment for us, or impetus for us to act in relation to this. And it's absolutely critical that we do act.
There's going to be a safety net in terms of payments to farmers. So for another 12 months at least, it's going to be business as usual, which it doesn't seem to advocate towards making change. Do you not to be more ambitious than that?
So I am full of ambition. It's important we provide a safety net for we also transition to a sustainable future. And part of that is the Farming with Nature programme. So I'm working with officials and with the sectors around us, farmers, environmental groups, on how we can scope that.
But you've admitted yourself that the Farming for Nature scheme as part of the new situation is actually almost the least developed of the schemes that you are bringing forward.
Yeah, and the difference between this year and last year is you have a minister in post. So I've been in post just over 100 days, and I am putting lots of energy to this because I know that Lough Neagh is a priority, not just for me, but for the people of Northern Ireland, and we have to change how we do farming here in Northern Ireland. So I'll be working night and day with officials to get these schemes rolled out because I see farmers who want to engage with them, so I want to give them the opportunity to do that. Because I want us to be an exemplar, so the people across the UK look to Northern Ireland and say, I want to be a part of that.
We love your positivity, and it's maybe needed because we've been talking to farmers as we've been going round, and there's a common theme that it's been a very, very difficult year. Terrible wet weather conditions, production costs have risen, terrible challenges.
Yeah, there really is. And if people want to talk to me about climate change, it's a reality here today when we're seeing the extreme weather events. And that's why it's really key in terms of future support. We build resilient sector, not just to protect the environment and also for farms, but so that they can go to their banks and can borrow and give them security in terms of the future.
You have to incentivise more than penalise, do you not, to get people working the right way forward?
Going forward, we have to do both. And it's a bit of carrot and a bit of stick in terms of how do we move forward. And I know that the overwhelming majority of farmers are doing sustainable farming practice and they're doing it the right way. The challenge is how do we educate and engage with people so they can do the practices which are most productive and most sustainable. But for those who are flouting the law, we do need to look at in terms of enforcement around this, because people say to me day and daily that what's happening in terms of environmental crime, they want to see a different approach, and I'll be looking at that over the time ahead.
Andrew Muir. And that's all for today at the Balmoral Show. I'm Helen Mark, the studio manager is Michael Harrison, and the producer is Beatrice Fenton. And now a look ahead to next week.
I'm Tim Harford, and here at More or Less, we're your weekly guide to the numbers and statistics in the news and in everyday life.
The average weekly shop, £110 more.
32.6 million GP appointments. 90% of fish and chip shops were selling shark. And when those numbers don't seem to add up, we're here to crunch the calculations.
I did look at some, data.
No question or number is too big or too small. From the entire government budget to thousands of missing cats. The new series of More or Less with me, Tim Harford, starts next Wednesday morning at 9 on BBC Radio 4 and on BBC Sound.
It's 6 o'clock on Friday the 17th of May. Good morning, this is Today with Nick Robinson and Justin Wood.
Headlines this morning: Ukraine's second biggest city, Kharkiv, has come under heavy Russian attack overnight, while Ukrainian drones are reported to have struck Belgorod just over the border. We'll hear from our correspondent Jonathan Beale, who's been on the front line of the battle in Kharkiv.
This is where they're directing artillery fire. They're telling us to get out. They've said this area is under threat, and we're going to go.
The United States says there's been a complete halt in fuel supplies entering Gaza through the Rafah crossing and has appealed to Israel to do more to help get aid into the territory. We'll hear from the UN Humanitarian Aid Chief Martin Griffiths, who tells the programme that Gazans face famine if more food and fuel isn't allowed to flow across those land borders.
The stocks of food inside Gaza are virtually consumed for the people of Rafah and for the humanitarian workers involved in Gaza in responding to their needs. This is what we feared.
Also on today's programme, playwright James Graham on his play about a man who was killed with a single punch, and we've had a very special message from a brand new friend of the programme.
Hi there, it's Dolly Parton, and I'm tickled pink that you're so curious about my UK roots. Hey, thank you for having my wonderful niece Jada on the show today.
Dolly's niece Jada, yes, she tells us how the legendary singer from the Blue Mountains of Tennessee traced her roots all the way back to North Wales. That's all after the BBC News Fred this morning by Jane Steele.
The United States says it's concerned that the flow of fuel into Gaza via the southern border crossing at Rafah has come to a complete halt. A State Department spokesperson has warned the situation in the territory is deteriorating and appealed to Israel to do more to allow access for aid. Our correspondent Dan Johnson has the latest from Jerusalem.
The US military is close to completing its temporary dock, which will handle bigger ships bringing aid into Gaza. A British delivery is already sailing from Cyprus. But the UN says the pier shouldn't be relied on exclusively, stressing that land routes are the most important and effective way to get aid to Palestinian refugees. It highlighted the closure of the Rafah crossing on Egypt's border since Israeli soldiers moved into the area last week. The UN's warning that over 2 million Palestinians face impending famine if more food and fuel doesn't flow across Gaza's land borders. The UN's revised down its estimates of the numbers of women and children killed in Gaza after a reassessment of the 35,000 total provided by Hamas officials.
An air raid alert in the northeastern Ukrainian region of Kharkiv has been lifted after more than 16.5 hours. At least 5 drones have hit the city of Kharkiv, causing a fire. The alert was the longest recorded since the start of the Russian invasion in February 2022. The BBC investigation has found that thousands of children with complex needs are missing school because councils in England are failing to meet care plan deadlines. Data released following Freedom of Information requests suggest that at least 12 councils delivered fewer than 10% of education, health and care plans, or EHCPs, within the statutory timeframe of 20 weeks. Charlie Rose reports.
An EHCP is a legal document setting out the support a child or young person should receive. On average, in England, just under half of plans are delivered within 20 weeks. But Freedom of Information requests to every local education authority in England suggest performance at many councils is falling. At least 12 delivered fewer than 10% of EHCPs within the 20-week statutory timeframe between April and December last year. The Local Government Association blamed increasing demand and insufficient funding. The Department for Education said funding for young people with complex needs had risen by 60% this year.
The Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, has likened pay talks with junior doctors in England to a peace process away from the glare of the media. She told Nick Robinson on Radio 4's Political Thinking podcast she wanted to give people the time and space for discussions. Junior doctors have been on strike 10 times since March last year. Our health editor Hugh Pym reports.
After a 5-month standoff since the last negotiations, the Junior Doctors Union, the British Medical Association and the government have agreed to restart talks with an independent mediator who hasn't yet been named. In her interview with Nick Robinson, Victoria Atkins said she wanted to ensure people round the table were not beholden to deadlines or tweets. She agreed with the suggestion that these would be secret talks like a peace process, with people going out of the glare of the media to try to get a settlement. The Health Secretary said she wanted to not just resolve the pay dispute in England, but also tackle issues around working conditions.
MPs are calling on the government to invest in programmes to boost teacher recruitment, training and retention in England. The Education Committee found targets for the numbers on initial teacher training courses were missed in 10 subjects in the last academic year. These included maths and physics. The Department for Education spokesman said there were a record number of teachers with bursaries of up to £30,000 in subjects where there's most need. The price of olive oil has risen faster than any other food or drink over the past year. The average cost of half a litre bottle was £5.78. It's now £8.04. The increase is because of poor olive harvests, which were affected by a severe drought in Spain, wildfires in Greece, and a new bacterial infection spreading through trees in Italy. New guidelines on dealing with claims of the supernatural are being issued by the Vatican. It's the first time in almost half a century that the rules have been updated, as Mark Lowen reports from Rome.
Weeping statues, healing relics and divine apparitions. Some have been recognised by the Vatican to be credible and miraculous, leading to pilgrimages to Lourdes in France or Fatima in Portugal, to spots where they're said to have taken place. But other cases are judged by church officials to be baloney, a product of our social media world, where reports of apparitions can be spread by disinformation and rumour. So today the Vatican is updating its guidelines on reporting such phenomena, and is likely to offer new criteria to combat the baseless.
Mark Lowen reporting.
Thank you. 6 minutes past 6. Are there any miracles in the weather? Simon King, I assume not.
Well, Justin, you know what, a weekend is coming up and it's looking mostly dry across the UK, so that may be a small miracle for our UK weather. It's much drier than it was yesterday. North Wales had a lot of rainfall, 20 to 30 millimetres in places. Today is looking mostly dry across the UK. But for southwest and southeast England, towards eastern England, it's mist and fog around this morning, which you need to be careful of. It's going to gradually clear away, and by mid-morning it should be pretty much all cleared. And there'll be lots of sunshine before the fair weather cumulus cloud builds up in the sky through the afternoon, but still sunny spells remaining. The possibility of 1 or 2 showers by mid-afternoon across the far south, but those are pretty isolated, and it's warmer than yesterday, temperatures of 17 to 22 degrees. For Wales, the Midlands, we've got some mist and fog as well this morning, but that's going to clear away to bring some sunny spells for most of the day. And again, there'll be a bit of cloud building up at times this afternoon, and temperatures of 18 to 21. For northwest and northeast England, it's this morning with some coastal fog in the northeast, but the cloud will tend to break up and there'll be some sunny spells this afternoon with highs of 17 to 20 Celsius. And for Northern Ireland and Scotland, the odd fog patch, but mostly clear this morning with some sunshine, turning a little cloudier in Northern Ireland and southern Scotland later with a chance of a shower or two. Otherwise dry with sunny spells, temperatures of 19 to 23 degrees. But into Saturday, we're going to see a sea threat affecting eastern Scotland, northeast England, so staying murky here, but elsewhere, plenty of sunshine, just a few showers in southwest England, central Scotland and across South Wales as well.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. It is 8 minutes past 6. Let's take our first look at the morning papers and what's making the news websites as well. Plenty of reviews of Sir Keir Starmer's announcement about what Labour plans to do early on if the party wins the general election. Starmer lays cards on the table, says the Financial Times, alongside a picture of him holding aloft a pamphlet featuring his party's new pledges. The Times political sketch writer Tom Beck calls them baby steps for appealing the will learn to toddle before.
What is Labour's big offer, asks The Sun, which describes the pledges as lacklustre. The Daily Mail calls them blandly vague. The Telegraph says they show Sir Keir is not ready to rule. The Guardian reckons the opposite. Sir Keir, it says, has proved himself to be Britain's Prime Minister. Since the budget and the start is smooth how inevitable the Labour victory was.
The Daily Express leads on claims by the Chancellor that taxes will go up under a Labour government. The Telegraph says Jeremy Hunt will accuse Sir Keir of using playground politics to disguise plans to hit families in the pocket. The Shadow Financial Secretary of the Treasury, James Murray, tells the paper there's nothing Mr Hunt can say or do to hide the fact that people are worse off than the Conservatives. The Mail says the Johnson warning urged on to reveal Labour's proposal for a publicly owned energy company could cost £80 billion. The paper said 3/4 of the cash is coming from
Infantry Royal Mail is the Mail's front page headline. It carries a warning from the business secretary Jimmy Badenoch that she won't allow a proposed takeover of the firm by the Czech billionaire Daniel Kretinsky unless certain services are protected. The paper says she's called for cast-iron guarantees that 6 days a week deliveries will be maintained. Mr. Kretinsky insists he'll keep first-class deliveries 6 days a week and one price goes anywhere services across the UK.
The Eye reports that UK water firms are dumping sewage on their own doorstep. It says England's 9 water companies pump raw sewage into rivers nearest their corporate headquarters for a total of 56,000 hours last year. The paper says the findings underscore how extensive the problem is and how little has been invested to solve it. It quotes Thames Water, which says the sewage system was historically designed in this way to relieve pressure and prevent overflow into people's homes.
According to The Sun, England fans have seen offensive Second World War related chants during the Euro 2024 competition in Germany. They're going to face instant fines of up to a month's salary. The paper says supporters will be instructed to declare their incomes and marched straight to a cash machine.
A picture of a surrealist painting depicting extinct volcanoes and a giant holding a human-faced pufferfish features in the Times. The headline alongside it reads, £22 million auction is surreal turnaround for forgotten British artists. The paper says the sale has made Leonora Carrington, who died in 2011, the most valuable British-born female artist at auction. The painting was born by an Argentine billionaire who described it as one of the most admired works in the history of surrealism.
The Times, 11 minutes past 6.
As we're hearing the top line news bulletin this morning, the United States is deeply concerned about the flow of aid and fuel into Gaza. Our correspondent in Jerusalem, Dan Johnson, can tell us more. Good morning to you, Dan. What have they been saying?
Good morning. Yes, there is positive news on the aid flow into Gaza in the sense of this enormous floating dock that the US military has been installing, being close to completion, and we know there are aid ships already sailing towards Gaza, ready to deliver aid through that new facility. But the warning from the US, from the UN and from others is that that shouldn't be solely relied on, that the most important and effective routes for getting aid into Gaza are the land border crossings, and particularly the Rafah crossing, which has been closed for a week now since the Israeli military moved into that area and closed on the Gaza side. So that has disrupted aid supplies massively, and the lack of food and fuel now that is getting into Gaza is posing a real threat of impending famine to more than 2 million Palestinian refugees. That is the clear warning from the United Nations, that not enough food is getting in there and that there isn't enough fuel to ship around the food that is available to get it to the people who need it most.
We're going to hear from the UN's Martin Griffiths at about 10 to 8 this morning. The concern being, is it, Dan, that just as they make some progress with that floating pier, and also some progress in the north, I think, of Gaza, they're actually going backwards in the south.
Exactly, and the message is that although this huge $300 million project to provide this floating dock is close to completion, that shouldn't be seen as a single solution, that there are trucks waiting to get into Gaza that can bring food and fuel now to people who are on the brink of starvation. So the clear message to the Israelis is you need to do more to get the land border crossings open to enable that flow to take place, so that there is food, so that there is fuel, and the message is that people need places of safety, because with the military operation intensifying around Rafah, the Israeli military doing more and more there are hundreds of thousands of more Palestinians who are uprooted, who are trying to find somewhere safe to live, and these are people who had already been forced from their homes earlier in this conflict.
Dan Jones in Jerusalem, thank you.
It's 30 minutes past 6. The trial of Donald Trump in New York may well be wrapping up next week. This is the Stormy Daniels hush money trial. The star witness's credibility, though, the star prosecution witness, has been attacked by the Trump team on the last day of the hearings this week, as I've been hearing from our North American correspondent, John Sullivan.
We're still hearing from Michael Cohen. He's the man who ties the payment of the hush money to Stormy Daniels directly to Donald Trump, as well as tying Donald Trump to the knowledge that those payments were unlawfully disguised as legal fees. That's at the heart of the prosecution case. And what we've been hearing over a full day of pretty grueling questioning from the defence is their attempt to cast as much doubt on that connection as possible, essentially to undermine Michael Cohen's integrity. He was, of course, Donald Trump's former fixer and lawyer, right at the heart of Donald Trump's inner circle. They famously fell out. Michael Cohen was prosecuted in part for payment of that hush money back in 2018. And really what the jury is being asked to decide here are two alternate versions of Michael Cohen's motivations. For the defence, that he is dishonest, a liar, motivated by revenge, and that his dishonesty, his greed, his corruption is all due to his own personal foibles and failings. The prosecution is saying, yeah, he may be all of those things, but he was doing them on behalf of a higher power, if you like, namely Donald Trump. Michael Cohen is a former lawyer. He handled himself pretty coolly, but you could sense that after many, many hours, the defence were landing some blows.
And after Michael Cohen, is that it?
It's certainly it for the prosecution. So he's the final, their star witness and their last witness. What we don't know is whether the defence are going to call any witnesses. And of course, the big question is whether Donald Trump himself will testify.
Well, no one really expects that, do they, because of the risk of perjury?
Exactly. I mean, most lawyers would say, you'd advise your client not to. Nobody in the US legal system has to risk incriminating themselves on the stand. That would be the advice. But then again, this is Donald Trump. He is using this trial, of course, Justin, as a campaign platform. Might he find this too big an opportunity to refuse? It's difficult to say. And don't forget, he has constantly been telling his public that he is being gagged, prevented from speaking, that this trial is a political persecution. Perhaps it might look a little bit odd if after all that he chooses to exercise his right to silence.
A tantalising possibility. John Subwood, thank you.
It's now 17 minutes past 6. There's a stark warning that many of Britain's universities face a material risk of closure, unless that is they can find a way to cut their cost. It all comes in a new report from the Office for Students, and Felicity's been taking a look at that and joins us with that and the rest of the morning's business news. Morning, Chief Les.
Good morning. Yes, the Office of Students acts as a regulator and competition authority for higher education in England. Its annual report says 40% of British universities are expected to run budget deficits this year. It claims an increasing number of universities will need to make what it calls significant changes to their funding models. Let's talk to Rosalind Gill, who's Head of Policy and Engagement at the National Centre for Universities and Business, which promotes collaboration between the two. And earlier this week, it coordinated a letter to the Prime Minister from businesses including Siemens and Anglo American. Rosalind, good morning.
Good morning, Felicity.
So this report from the OFS says the sector has become reliant on fee income from international students. What do you see as the main funding issue, the main threats to our university sector?
Well, the income that universities get for each student simply does not cover the cost of teaching in full, including, of course, the wider costs of providing them with the support and resources that they need. We also increasingly see a lot of research funding gaps as well on the other side. So a lot of the research that universities conduct, and including the kind of training of the academic workforce and the wider infrastructure, is simply not fully costed by the government, so they don't get the full amount of funding that it's required to do that. And over the years, international student fees really have helped plug some of the gaps, and also importantly helped universities to work on wider activities beyond teaching and research. So things like local leadership, working with businesses large and small, research commercialisation. So all of this is really at risk with the very high levels of international students policies that are really affecting our attractiveness as a destination for international learning.
A material risk of closure. I mean, those are very strong words when you think about establishments like universities. Is that a risk you think is real?
Yes, it is definitely real in the worst case scenarios. In fact, the OFS even warned that there are plausible scenarios in which it's 80% of universities that are plunging into deficit. And what that means is that in some local areas, universities might be lost that are really important, not just to the national picture, but also to things that are happening within kind of local areas as well. But also, even if we're not talking about closure, the impacts are really significant. So for a lot of universities, they will be looking at some of the activities that they do that are not fully costed and wondering those they might not be able to undertake in the future, and that includes lots of things that are really important to the economy and to society more broadly. So that's concerning too.
Now, what's the answer then if we are likely to see overseas students dropping in number? Can our higher education model get away from its reliance on that group?
Really what we want to do is to see a shift in the debate. This is why we coordinated the letter from businesses. If we really